Spencer Kanoki, and this is Fool's FAQ, a show where I take the internet's most burning questions and give you an answer that'll make you the smartest person at your next James Cameron film. On today's episode, I'll never let go, Jack. Picture this. April 14th, 1912, one of the most luxurious ships ever built is barreling through the North Atlantic at full speed, headed to New York. Within hours, it's on the ocean floor, with over 1,500 people dead. But what if the Titanic didn't accidentally hit that iceberg? What if someone wanted it to sink? For over a century, people have spun increasingly wild theories about this disaster. Some involve a secret swap with their sister ship. Others point fingers at one of the richest men in America orchestrating the whole thing as a cover-up. Insurance fraud, murder disguised as an accident, Federal Reserve takeover plots. The more you dig, the crazier it sounds. And that's exactly why we're digging today. So, let's start with what we actually know happened. On the night of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic was roughly 370 miles south-southeast of Newfoundland, Canada, when it struck an iceberg at approximately 11:40 p.m. ship's time. The ship had actually received multiple ice warnings that day, but it was traveling at a speed of about 22 knots, roughly 25 miles per hour, when lookouts spotted the massive iceberg. There wasn't enough time to turn or stop. Now here's the crucial part. The iceberg scraped along the starboard, that's the right side of the ship's hull, below the waterline. This glancing blow opened up 6 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments to the sea. The Titanic had been designed with the assumption that it could stay afloat even if up to 4 compartments flooded. 6 was a death sentence. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, the ship broke in two and sank completely. Approximately 1,500 people died in the freezing water, which was about 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the wreck wasn't actually discovered until September 1st, 1985, when explorer Robert Ballard and his team located it on the ocean floor using sophisticated underwater imaging technology. And here's where the story gets interesting, because that discovery actually fed some of the conspiracy theories. Enter Robin Gardner. In the late 1990s, he published a book proposing one of the wildest theories, that the ship that sank wasn't actually the Titanic at all. It was her sister ship, the Olympic, disguised as the Titanic as part of an elaborate insurance scheme. Here's the theory setup. About a year before the Titanic's maiden voyage, the Olympic was involved in a serious collision. It was badly damaged and declared unsuitable for regular service. The repairs were going to be incredibly expensive, and the White Star Line, the company that owned both ships, was supposedly facing financial trouble. So, according to Gardner, here's what they supposedly did. They took the damaged Olympic, disguised it as a brand new Titanic, sent it out to sea, accidentally sank it, and then collected a massive insurance payout. Meanwhile, the real Titanic would be renamed Olympic and go on to have a long, profitable career under a different name. The problem? Well, this theory falls apart almost immediately when you actually look at the evidence. First, the Olympic and Titanic, while similar, were not identical. The Titanic had several notable design changes that were made during construction, including different window configurations on B deck, an enclosed promenade section on A deck instead of an open one, and slightly different interior layouts. These weren't superficial changes you could quickly swap out. They were structural. Second-class passengers knew the difference. First-class passengers knew the difference. Hundreds of people would have had to stay silent about a conspiracy involving thousands of people, their luggage, and their lives. But here's a really practical problem. If you wanted to commit insurance fraud by sinking a ship, why would you do it in the middle of the Atlantic with 2,200 people on board? Why not stage an accident in port? Why would you risk thousands of lives and create an international incident when you could have simply damaged the ship locally, collected the insurance for repairs, and called it a day? Then there's the J.P. Morgan angle. J.P. Morgan was the incredibly powerful American financier and basically the owner of the White Star Line through his company, the International Mercantile Marine. He was also instrumental in creating the Federal Reserve, the U.S. central banking system. And here's where conspiracy theorists get really excited. 3 of the wealthiest men in the world were aboard the Titanic: John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. Conspiracy theorists, and this is where it gets really crazy, claim that these men were opposed to the Federal Reserve, so Morgan deliberately sank the ship to kill them off, except he didn't, or at least that's what evidence tells us. There's zero evidence that either Astor or Guggenheim ever publicly opposed the Federal Reserve. Isidor Straus actually supported it. Also, Morgan had a first-class ticket for the Titanic's maiden voyage, but canceled due to a reported illness. If you're orchestrating a mass murder plot involving your 3 richest rivals, wouldn't you at least want to be on the ship to supervise? And here's the biggest logical problem. How exactly would Morgan guarantee that the Titanic would hit an iceberg at just the right angle and speed to cause catastrophic damage? According to maritime experts, there were roughly 9,000 different ways the Titanic could have hit that iceberg and survived. It had to hit at precisely the right angle, with precisely the right speed, scraping along the hull to open exactly the right compartments. That's not something you can just plan. That's pure chance. Even if Morgan controlled the weather and the ocean, he couldn't control physics. Now, one claim that does get repeated is that the Titanic's insurance was mysteriously increased from $5 million to $12.5 million just 5 days before the maiden voyage, resulting in a huge payout. Now, this sounds suspicious, right? Well, it does, except that it's not actually true. According to official Lloyd's Maritime insurance records and testimony given at the 1912 Senate inquiry, the Titanic was valued at around $7.5 million, but was actually underinsured at just $5 million. There's no evidence in any official record that the insurance was increased to $12.5 million. If the White Star Line had suddenly doubled their insurance coverage just days before a voyage, that would have raised immediate red flags to the insurers. Why would they approve such a massive increase without investigation? The fact is, there's no documentation for this claim anywhere. It's pure speculation. Now, when Robert Ballard discovered the wreck in 1985, some conspiracy theorists seized on details about the ship's condition. There were claims that the hull showed evidence of internal explosions, not just iceberg damage, but here's the truth. When a massive steel ship breaks in two under extreme pressure, the metal does show complex stress patterns. The Titanic's wreck, lying on the ocean floor at more than 12,000 feet of depth, has experienced enormous pressure and deterioration. The bent outward metal that some theorists point to, well, that's completely consistent with the stresses involved in the ship sinking, breaking apart, and settling on the ocean floor. It's not evidence of explosives. So, why do these theories persist? Well, it's because the truth is genuinely tragic, and humans don't always like accepting that. The Titanic sank because of a perfect storm of circumstances: excessive speed, poor visibility, a lack of sufficient lifeboats, and pure bad luck with an iceberg at exactly the wrong moment. There's no villain to blame, no conspiracy to uncover, just a combination of factors that led to one of the most maritime disasters in history. Conspiracy theories offer us something that truth doesn't, meaning they suggest that somebody planned this, which somehow feels better than accepting it was random. But the actual story of a state-of-the-art ship thought to be unsinkable, struck by an unavoidable disaster with not enough lifeboats to save everyone aboard, is actually plenty compelling on its own. So, was the Titanic intentionally sunk? No. The evidence is overwhelming that this was a tragic accident. The ship hit an iceberg, the damage was catastrophic, people died, all the conspiracy theories, the switch theory, the Morgan murder plot, the insurance fraud scheme fall apart under even the lightest scrutiny. They required too many people to stay silent, too many improbabilities to align perfectly, and they contradict what the actual historical record shows us. The real lesson here: sometimes the simplest explanation actually is the correct one. The Titanic wasn't sunk on purpose. It was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, moving too fast with too few lifeboats. And that, believe it or not, is a lot more interesting than any conspiracy. Thank you so much for listening to Fool's FAQ. Feel free to leave a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts, as it also helps new listeners discover the show. For more fascinating answers to your burning questions, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and always stay curious.